male vocalists in jazz, and it's a long history of male vocalists. But one of the first guys who really started off the whole jazz thing was a guy named Noble Cicero. Born in Indianapolis, Indiana, and played instrument at an early age. Took up music lessons, went to Wilberforce College in Ohio, and when the First World War started off, he joined the 369th Infantry with Jim Europe, and they went to France. He was one of the first to take, Jim Europe was the first to bring jazz to the European audience because people here didn't really know what that music was about. He was the drum major and also the vocalist. Came back from the war, and Jim Europe got killed by one of his drummers, and he and Eubie Blake took over the band. And in 1921, they were one of the first bands to go on Broadway with a musical called Shuffle Along, and it was a big hit and traveled all over the country. Different, I think Josephine Baker was a member of that. Dorothy Dandridge. It was like a review show.
No, Dorothy Dandridge.
What's that?
Dorothy Dandridge wasn't born.
Yeah, she wasn't born. She was at but Josephine Baker was in there, and I think Ivy Anderson played on the show too. But he came back, and him and Eubie Blake had a collaboration. They did a thing called "I'm So Wild About Harry." That was one of the hit songs in the musical, and later in 1948, I think it was Harry Truman used that as his campaign song. But Noble Cicero, one of the great first vocalists that really came, it wasn't jazz, it was more of a, how can I say, it was off from vaudeville type thing, something that Al Jolson was trying to do at that time. This guy's considered really the first jazz vocalist. His name was Satchmo, Louis Armstrong, New Orleans. Most people know about Louis Armstrong. Started playing when he was a kid, playing around Bunk Johnson, great trumpet player, taught Louis in his early days, but his favorite teacher was Joe King Oliver. And when Oliver moved to Chicago in 1922, he sent for Louis, and Louis came to Chicago to join the Creole Jazz Band, which was the hottest band in Chicago. Chicago was really a big center of jazz at that time, along with New York. He joined the band which had the Dodd brothers, Johnny Dodds on clarinet, Baby Dodds on drums. Also Lil Hardin, who later, about a year later, her and Louis got married, and she was telling Louis how he should expand himself and not just stay under King Oliver, because King Oliver was kind of beating the guys for money. You know, he wasn't paying them adequate. So he took her advice and went to New York and joined the great Fletcher Henderson Orchestra, which was the best big band in jazz at that time, black band. And he stayed with Fletcher for about a year and came back. Fletcher wouldn't let him sing, and when he came back to Chicago, he started singing. He did a thing called Heebie Jeebies, and where he dropped the music and started scat singing, you know. One of the great vocalists, his early things was Stardust, and I Can't Give You Anything But Love. He did so many great things, Louis Armstrong. And later he became the ambassador of music for this country. When I was young, we had the impression that Louis Armstrong was Uncle Tom, but he wasn't. When Eisenhower failed to send troops to Little Rock, he refused to go on tour to Russia, and they had to send Benny Goodman instead of Louis. But he was an activist all the way up to his end. But one of the, I would say, top 5 greatest jazz musicians ever, because when his impact lasted to almost to the bebop period came in. Most trumpet players tried to play like Louis Armstrong. Oh, I'd like to acknowledge my friend sitting down here. Her name is Belle. She's 106 years old. I've known her about 35 years now. a guy they call Mr. 5 by 5. His name was Jimmy Rushing. He was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and went to Los Angeles in the early 20s and played with Jelly Roll Morton. Then he came back to Oklahoma City and joined Walter Page's Blue Devils, which was a band with Walter Page and Lester Young and Hot Lips Page, Buster Smith on alto saxophone. The band moved, they left the Blue Devils and moved to Kansas City and joined the hottest band in Kansas City at the time, which was Benny Moten's band, which could rival any band in New York or anywhere. This band could really swing. Count Basie was a member, Lester Young, and Benny Moten died suddenly. I think he went to the dentist and never really got out of the chair. And Count Basie took over the band, and Lester Young and all the cats. They came to New York with that band, with Jimmy Rushing. He, one of his first hits was Going to Chicago, and I left my baby on the back door crying. It's bad, it's bad. And Harvard Blues, but not only could he sing blues, this guy had a beautiful, he had a range from baritone up to tenor. He could sing ballads, he could, sing the blues. Joe Williams said he's the best blues singer he ever heard. Also Count Basie says that, but Jimmy Rushing was the 5 by 5. Thomas Fats Waller, born in New York City, started, I think, piano when he was about 4 years old. His father, he played in the church when he was 10 years old. By the time he was 12, he was playing at the Lafayette Theater, playing organ behind silent movies. Fats was one of the, along with Jelly Roll Morton, one of the first really prolific jazz writers. Honeysuckle Rose, Ain't Misbehaving, and quite a few. They said I Can't Give You Anything But Love was his tune too, which he sold for $500, and also On the Sunny Side of the Street, which is credited to some other people. But not only a great pianist, he brought in a different style of, how can I say, comedian. He could just use a song and then make a story out of it, bring his own life into that composition. Fats was one of the top players in New York at that time, but around 1940, he was coming back from a tour. He had just did the movie Stormy Weather, and he was coming back to New York and passed away. I think it was pneumonia that got him. But 36 years old, but he lived so quick, you know. He was also the first guy who wrote a jazz waltz. It's called Jitterbug Waltz. That just reminded me that I wanted to put that in there, because before Take 5 or anything, everybody thought three-quarter wasn't hip to jazz, but Fats Waller wrote Jitterbug Waltz. I think around 1935 he did that. But Kev, he had taken vocal classes and music classes, and he had an older sister named Blanche Calloway who was got off into music before he did and had a big band. So Kev started hanging out in the clubs in Baltimore, and Chick Webb, the famous drummer, really kind of tutored him into the jazz field. He went to New York with a group called the Alabamians, and the group broke up. So they put Kev in charge of it, and they got into, Duke Ellington went on the tour, and they got into the Cotton Club, playing, Kev Calloway's band got into the Cotton Club playing alongside Duke when Duke returned. But he had one of the famous bands in New York at that time, Chu Berry, Milt Hinton, Dizzy Gillespie, Cozy Cole, some of the top cats. And his big hit was Minnie the Moocher. Also, he did some things for Betty Boop. If you ever watch Betty Boop cartoons, Kev Calloway, they used Kev Calloway, his little comedian figure in there, and he's talking jive. Also, he wrote a book on jive around 1939, hitting people to the talk that was happening in Harlem at that time. But one of the great, and later in life, played in a movie called Blues Brothers, which was a big hit Camp Cowell. Oh yeah, he had some of the early beboppers in his band, like Dizzy Gillespie, Chewberry, and later they evolved into that new style. Cam was singing kind of beboppers, kind of stuff, hip, scat kind of vocals, which was a precursor to which later came to be known as bebop. One of my favorite vocalists, along with Nat King Cole when I was a youngster. His name was Al Hibbler. He was born in Little Rock and started singing around Little Rock with J. Mac Shan, and Duke Ellington came through, I think around 1935, and heard him and gave him an audition, but Al said when he went to the audition, he got drunk, and Duke didn't want that. Duke said he left town and didn't take him with him. So Al kept playing around. He came to New York with J. Mac Shan's band, and Duke heard him again, and Duke hired him, and he became one of Duke's best vocalists. He took the place of Herb Jeffries, who was Duke's vocalist before that. And Al did a hit called "Do Nothing Till You Hear From Me." Duke wrote that especially for him. He also, when I heard him, he did a thing, I think it was in the 50s, called Unchained Melody. What's the other guy, can't think of his name. He did a version of it. Roy Hamilton did a version of it. I heard first, and then I heard Al Hibbler's version. I said, wow, I didn't know which one was the best. I mean, because it's such a great song, you know, and you have to be a hell of a vocalist to sing that song. And Al Hibbler did a fabulous job on it. And also, just before he died, he was arrested quite a few times in protests and everything, and couldn't get no record contracts, and Frank Sinatra gave him a contract with Reprise Records, and he started recording again. And one of his last records was done with saxophone player, blind saxophone player Roland Kirk. Both of them. Al Hibbler was blind from birth. I forgot to tell you that. He was blind from birth. But they said that he would go on the stage. He wouldn't need nobody to lead him out on the stage. He would come out there all by himself, you know. That's something like Ray Charles. Ray Charles, when he first got a car, he told his son he wanted to drive. And his son let him, Ray wrecked the car. I think in Georgia, he was born in, yeah. But his family came to Chicago also. I failed to mention that Nat King Cole went to this famous school in Chicago called DeSable High School, which had a music teacher named Captain Walter Dyett, who taught Nat King Cole, taught this guy, Johnny Hartman also, but Gene Ammons, a host of musicians, Ammon Jamal, Johnny Griffin, all of them went to DeSable. And
Mel Torme.
Mel Torme, that's right, he went there too. And Captain Walter Dyett was the music teacher. But Johnny Hartman started singing around Chicago, started with Earl Hines' band. And Dizzy heard him, and Dizzy got him in the band in around 1945. He sang with Dizzy. And after that, he just went obscure. Nobody heard about it. He did some recordings around 1953 for Bethlehem, 2 albums, which didn't really gain no recognition. And then John Coltrane, who was hot at that time on Impulse Records, he remembered Johnny Hartman from his days with Dizzy, and he asked him to come and do an album. And they did an album, John Coltrane with Johnny Hartman. It became a masterpiece. They did My One and Only Love, Lush Life, Autumn Serenade. I mean, it's just beauty. This guy had one of the, most of the singers say he had one of the best voices of all the singers. Ella, Frank Sinatra, a lot of them say that Johnny Hartman had one of the greatest voices. In his later years, he didn't really want to go off into the pop stuff, so he just started playing at supper clubs, the Carlisle Hotel in Waldorf Astoria, and that's what he did up until the time he died. Johnny Hartman, one of the, I would say, had the greatest voice of all of them to me. You know, I like Mr. B and Nat, but this cat was. Man here, Mr. Joe Williams. He was born in Mississippi, but his family came to Chicago. He didn't go to DeSable High School. He just Played around Chicago with a group, drummer Red Saunders and different groups that played with Earl Hines. Came to New York and played with Benny Carter. Did some things with Dizzy. He did a few things with Dizzy. But it wasn't until 1954 he got with Count Basie and he did Every Day I Have the Blues and It's All Right.
Look out now.
Nathaniel Nat King Cole. He was born in Montgomery, Alabama, but his family moved to Chicago at an early age. He had 3 brothers who were off into music, Ike, Eddie, and Freddie Cole. Eddie was a bass player, tuba player that played with Noble Sissle's band. And Nat got off into music. Some of his early recordings were with his brothers. And he was playing around Chicago, playing piano. Then he moved to the West Coast, and that's where his career really started blossoming. He formed a group with a guitar, bass, and piano, which later Art Tatum, Oscar Peterson, Iman Jamal, all of them started copying that format. No drummer, just a bass and a guitar player. And he did a recording called Straighten Up and Fly Right, which was about the monkey and the buzzard. Buzzard took the monkey for a ride in the air. And he started making hits after hits. He did the Christmas song. And it's a building in Los Angeles, it's the Capitol building. It was the first circular office building ever built. And they call it the house that Nat King Cole built because the company was really going down in the 40s, and Nat started doing hit Mona Lisa, Smile, and all these great hits. I mean, he could Blossom Fell, Unforgettable. I mean, he did so many. And I think it was in the early 50s, he really paid for, he had a little radio show. He had on radio for a while, and then later, around 54, he had the first TV show for a black entertainer. It was a half an hour, I think 15, 20-minute show, which he had people like Harry Belafonte, Ella, different people. It was great. My folks used to watch it every Sunday. We would watch it. But he couldn't get a sponsor, and the show just went off the air, just went down. And he died of cancer. He was a prolific smoker, you know. In them days, you could smoke right on the TV show. You come out there with, Dean Martin would come out with a cigarette and a martini or a drink. But one of the great singers, when I first was a youngster, I heard Mona Lisa. I wanted to sing like this guy because he had such a smooth, like chocolate voice. I mean, that's how it reminded me. It was a warm chocolate drink. But one of the greatest singers ever to me, you know.